Another story waits for you, just beyond the veil. Support the channel by liking and subscribing. It helps us keep going. Don't forget to tell us what you think in the comments. 6 real UFO horror stories the government tried to hide. Story 1. The Watcher in the Wheat. I never believed in UFOs. Not really. Not until the summer of 1987, when I was 17 and working the night shift at my uncle's grain silo just outside Roswell, New Mexico. Not the touristy part, but the real, dry, forgotten stretch of desert where the wind howls like a lost dog and the stars hang so low you feel like you could reach up and pluck one out of the sky. My name's Danny Reyes. My dad left when I was 6, and my mom worked double shifts at the hospital, so I spent most of my teenage years helping my Uncle Hector with his farm. It wasn't glamorous, just endless rows of wheat, rusted machinery, and the occasional coyote howling at the moon. But it was honest work, and it kept me out of trouble. Or so I thought. The night it happened, I was alone. Uncle Hector had gone into town for supplies, and I'd volunteered to stay behind to monitor the silo's moisture levels. A boring job that mostly involved checking gauges and making sure the ventilation fans didn't seize up. It was just past midnight. The air was still, unnaturally so. No crickets. No wind. Just silence, thick and heavy like a blanket pulled over your head. I was sitting on the metal steps outside the control shed, sipping lukewarm coffee from a thermos, when I saw it. At first, I thought it was a satellite, just a slow-moving light drifting across the sky. But then it stopped. Dead still. Hovering. And it wasn't white or yellow like a plane or star. It was a deep, pulsing violet, like the color of a bruise under moonlight. It hung there for maybe 30 seconds, silent, motionless. Then, without warning, it dropped straight down, fast, vanishing behind the eastern ridge. My heart hammered against my ribs. I told myself it was a drone, a military test, anything but what my gut was screaming, not of this world. I grabbed the old shotgun from the shed, more for comfort than protection, and walked toward the ridge. The wheat field stretched out before me, golden under the moon, swaying slightly even though there was no breeze. That's when I noticed the footprints. Not human. 3 long, slender impressions pressed deep into the dirt, spaced too far apart for a man. Each one ended in a sharp, claw-like point. They led from the base of the ridge straight into the heart of the field. I followed them. Stupid. So stupid. But I couldn't stop. It was like something was pulling me forward, whispering in a language I didn't understand but somehow knew. The air grew colder with every step. My breath came out in white puffs, though it was July. And then I saw it. Standing in the center of the field, half hidden by wheat stalks, was a figure. Tall, maybe 8 feet. Thin, almost skeletal, with limbs that bent in ways limbs shouldn't. Its skin shimmered like oil on water, shifting between black and silver depending on the angle. It had no face. Not blank, no face at all. Just smooth, featureless skin where eyes and a mouth should have been. It turned toward me. Not with its head. Its whole upper body rotated, smooth and silent, like a camera lens focusing. I froze. Couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. My fingers tightened around the shotgun, but I knew it wouldn't help. This thing, it wasn't afraid of bullets. Then it raised one long, spindly arm and pointed at me. Not threateningly. Almost curiously. And that's when the whispers started. Not in my ears. Inside my head. A chorus of voices, some childlike, some ancient, all speaking at once in a language that made my teeth ache. They weren't words, exactly. More like concepts. Hunger. Observation. Harvest. I dropped the gun and ran. I didn't look back. Didn't stop until I was locked inside the shed, trembling, drenched in sweat. I called the sheriff. Told him everything. He came out an hour later, flashlight in hand, skeptical but polite. We walked the field together. No footprints. No figure. No violet light. Just wheat. And silence. He patted my shoulder and said, "Long night, kid. Heap gets to you out here. But I knew what I saw. 2 days later, Uncle Hector came back. He found me curled up in the shed, refusing to go outside after dark. He didn't laugh. Just nodded like he'd been expecting it. That night, over weak coffee and stale tortillas, he told me something he never mentioned before. In 1947, his father, my great-uncle Mateo, was one of the ranch hands who found the wreckage outside Roswell. Not the official story, the real one. He said they didn't just find metal. They found bodies. And one of them wasn't dead. They kept it in a barn for 3 days, Hector whispered, eyes darting to the window. Fed it water. It didn't eat. Just watched. Then it vanished. No door opened. No window broken. Gone. He leaned closer. They came for him a week later. Men in black suits. Took him away. We never saw him again. I stared at him, cold dread pooling in my stomach. Why are you telling me this now? Because, he said, voice cracking, they're back. And they remember. The next morning, 2 black SUVs rolled up the driveway. No logos. No plates. Men in dark suits stepped out, sunglasses on despite the overcast sky. They didn't speak. Just stood there, watching the house. Uncle Hector packed a bag and handed me a key. Go to your mom's. Don't tell anyone what you saw. Don't write it down. Don't even think about it too loud. I left that afternoon. Never went back. But sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet, I still hear the whispers. And I swear, just last week, I saw that violet light again, hovering over the city skyline. Watching. Waiting. Harvesting. Story 2, The Blackout over Blackwater. My name is Dr. Evelyn Cho, and I used to work for the U.S. Air Force as a civilian aerospace engineer. I wasn't cleared for everything, nobody is, but I had top secret/SCI clearance, which meant I saw things most people only dream about in conspiracy forums. Still, nothing prepared me for what happened at Blackwater Research Station in Nevada in the winter of 2003. Blackwater wasn't on any map. Officially, it didn't exist. Unofficially, it was a listening post buried under 300 feet of rock in the Black Rock Desert, designed to monitor deep space anomalies and low-orbit satellite interference. My team was analyzing strange EM spikes coming from a region just north of Area 51, pulses that didn't match any known natural or man-made source. They were rhythmic, almost intentional. We called it the pulse. It started on December 12th. At 3:17 a.m., every system in the facility went dark. Not a power outage, total electromagnetic nullification. Lights, comms, backup generators, even the analog clock stopped. The only thing that kept working was the emergency oxygen recycler, which ran on mechanical pneumatics. We were sealed in a titanium tomb with no way out, and no way to call for help. There were 12 of us that night. Me, 2 other engineers, 4 technicians, 3 security personnel, and Dr. Arlen Pike, the project lead, a man who'd worked on black-budget programs since the 1970s. He was calm at first. Said it might be a solar flare or a classified EMP test gone wrong. But then the knocking started. Not on the doors. On the walls. Deep inside the rock. A slow, deliberate thud, 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 like something massive was tapping against the mountain from the outside. Sergeant Ruiz, one of the guards, checked the external cameras. All feeds were dead, except camera 7, which faced the eastern ridge. What we saw on the monitor made Ruiz vomit. A craft, black, smooth, no seams, no wings, no visible propulsion, hovered 200 feet above the desert floor. It wasn't reflecting light. It was absorbing it. The stars behind it vanished where it passed. And beneath it, figures. Tall. Thin. Moving in perfect unison, gliding across the sand without leaving tracks. They stopped at the base of the mountain and looked directly up, at us, as if they knew we were watching. Then the screen went black. 10 minutes later, the lights flickered back on. Systems rebooted. Comms returned. It was like nothing had happened. But when we checked the logs, every digital record from the blackout period had been erased, not corrupted. Erased. As if someone had reached into the code and plucked out those 47 minutes, like a bad memory. We reported it. Of course we did. But within hours, a team from Oversight arrived, men in civilian clothes with no IDs, speaking in flat, emotionless tones. They confiscated our personal devices, wiped our workstations, and ordered us to sign non-disclosure agreements that carried felony penalties for even thinking about discussing the incident. Dr. Pike refused. He said, "They're not just watching us. They're testing us. Seeing how we react when they shut down our world." They took him that night. Not arrested. Just escorted out. We never saw him again. I transferred out 2 weeks later, citing personal reasons. But the truth is, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that knocking. And worse, I started seeing things. At first, it was subtle. A shadow in my peripheral vision that vanished when I turned. My reflection in the mirror blinking a second too late. Then, one night in my apartment in Colorado Springs, I woke to the sound of static. My TV was off. But the screen glowed with that same black void, the one from camera 7. And in the center of it, a single word flickered in jagged white text. Remember. I moved again. Changed my name. Deleted my social media. But they always find you. Last month, I got a package with no return address. Inside was a hard drive and a note. They're not gone. They're waiting for the next blackout. I haven't plugged it in. But I hear the knocking again. Not in the walls. In my head. And this time, it's getting louder. Story 3. The highway that swallowed them whole. I was a state trooper for 14 years in rural Oregon before I handed in my badge and never looked back. Most people think law enforcement is about traffic stops and domestic disputes. But out here, in the backwoods between Bend and Burns, you learn real quick that some things don't show up on radar, and some disappearances don't get solved because they were never meant to be understood. My name's Carl Dobbs. And what happened on Route 395 on the night of October 31st, 2011, still haunts me like a ghost I can't outrun. It started with a 911 call at 11:48 p.m. A woman, voice shaking, whispering, "They're not human. They're watching us from the sky. Please send someone." Then static. The call traced to a payphone near mile marker 87, deep in the Malheur National Forest. No cell service out there. Just pines, sagebrush, and miles of empty road. I was the closest unit. Alone, like always. When I arrived, the payphone was off the hook, swaying slightly in the wind. No car. No footprints. Just a child's red mitten lying in the gravel. I called it in. Dispatch said no missing persons matched the description. But I knew that mitten. My daughter had one just like it before she passed from leukemia in 2009. Same brand. Same tiny embroidered snowflake. I should have walked away. But I didn't. I drove north, slow, lights off, scanning the tree line. That's when I saw the glow. Not fire. Not headlights. A soft, greenish-white luminescence hovering low over the canyon about 2 miles ahead. It pulsed like a heartbeat. And the air, it smelled like ozone and burned honey. I parked, grabbed my radio and sidearm, and moved on foot. The forest was dead silent. No owls. No wind. Even the crickets had shut up. Then I heard the voices. Not words. Just humming. Low, resonant, vibrating in my chest like a tuning fork. It came from the canyon below. I crept to the edge. What I saw froze my blood. 3 vehicles, 2 sedans and a pickup, were parked haphazardly on the road, doors wide open, engines still running. People stood around them, maybe 8 or 9, all facing the sky. They weren't moving. Not blinking. Just staring upward, arms limp at their sides. And above them, a disc-shaped object, maybe 150 feet across, hovering silently 50 feet off the ground. Its surface wasn't metal. It looked like liquid obsidian, shifting and rippling like water under moonlight. From its underside, thin beams of that same greenish light extended down, touching each person on the forehead. One of them, a little girl in a yellow raincoat, turned her head slowly toward me. Her eyes were gone. Not closed. Not covered. Gone. Just smooth, pale skin where sockets should have been. I raised my radio to call for backup, but before I could speak, the beam hit me. Not pain. Not heat. Just pressure. Like my skull was being gently squeezed by invisible hands. My vision blurred. My thoughts unraveled. I saw things, cities floating in clouds, oceans of black glass, beings with too many joints moving through time like it was fabric. And a voice, not in my ears, but in the core of my being, said, "You were not chosen. But you saw. That is enough." Then everything went white. I woke up at dawn, lying in the ditch beside my cruiser. The road was empty. No cars. No people. No craft. Just tire tracks leading into the forest, and ending abruptly, as if the vehicles had simply vanished mid-drive. I reported it. Of course I did. They sent investigators. Scoured the area with drones, dogs, ground-penetrating radar. Found nothing. Declared it a mass hallucination caused by atmospheric anomalies. I was put on administrative leave, then quietly encouraged to retire. But I kept digging. 6 months later, I found a pattern. Every 10 years, on or near Halloween, people disappear along that stretch of 395. Always near the same canyon. Always after reports of strange lights. And always, someone calls from that payphone. Last year, I went back. Just to look. The payphone was gone. In its place stood a new sign. Road closed. Hazardous conditions. But the road was perfectly clear. No construction. No barriers. As I turned to leave, my radio crackled to life on its own. Static, then a child's voice, whispering, "Daddy, they're coming back for the ones who remember." I drove away fast. Didn't stop until I crossed the state line. But sometimes, late at night, I hear that humming again. And I know. They haven't forgotten me. Story 4. The Children of Pine Ridge. I grew up on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota, where the wind carries stories older than the United States and the night sky feels like a living thing watching you. My grandmother used to say, "When the stars blink wrong, the old ones walk again." I thought it was just Lakota folklore, until the summer of 1999. My name is Miriam Red Cloud. I was 16 then, working as a summer aide at the tribal health clinic. It was a small building with peeling paint and a generator that coughed more than it ran, but it was all we had. That July, kids started getting sick. Not flu sick. Not food poisoning sick. They'd wake up screaming about the lights in the trees, their skin covered in strange, geometric burns that didn't blister or bleed, just shimmered like wet ink under moonlight. Doctors ran tests. Found nothing. No virus. No toxin. Just empty. Then the disappearances began. First it was little Tommy White Elk, 8 years old, vanished from his bedroom while his parents slept 10 feet away. No broken windows. No footprints. Just his stuffed wolf left on the pillow, eyes gouged out. Then 2 more. Then 5. The tribal council called in the FBI. They came, took notes, asked questions, and left. Said it was likely runaways or custody disputes. But we knew better. Because every night, just after midnight, the lights would return. Not car headlights. Not campfires. Orbs. Dozens of them, floating silently above the buttes, pale blue, humming like distant bees. They'd hover for hours, then vanish at dawn. And every time they came, another child would be gone by morning. I told my grandmother what I'd seen. She went pale. "It's the 𝒡ᴇʟᴄᴏ," she whispered. "But not the thunder beings we know. These are the ones who fell from the sky long ago. The ones who never belonged to Earth." She made me promise never to go out after dark. But I broke that promise. On August 3rd, my cousin Lila, only 7, disappeared. I couldn't just wait. Armed with my grandfather's old hunting knife and a pouch of sage, I hid in the tall grass near Medicine Butte, where the lights always gathered. Midnight came. The air grew cold. Then silence. Even the crickets stopped. The orbs appeared. Not floating. Drifting, like they were breathing. They circled the butte 3 times. Then merged into a single, blinding sphere that pulsed once, hard, like a heartbeat. From it, figures emerged. Tall. Slender. Moving with a grace that hurt to watch. Their skin wasn't gray like in the movies. It was the color of dried blood, stretched tight over elongated limbs. And their faces, they had no mouths. Just 2 large, black eyes that reflected nothing, not the stars, not the moon, not even me. They walked toward the reservation. Not walking. Gliding. Barely touching the ground. I held my breath, trembling. One of them paused. Turned its head, too far, too smoothly, and looked directly at my hiding spot. My blood turned to ice. It raised a hand. Not to attack. To beckon. And in that moment, I heard Lila's voice inside my head. "Miriam, they're not hurting us. They're taking us home." I ran. Didn't stop until I reached the clinic. The next morning, I found something taped to the door, a small, folded piece of paper. On it, drawn in what looked like charcoal, was a symbol, a circle with 7 lines radiating outward, each ending in a tiny eye. Beneath it, in shaky handwriting that wasn't mine, it said, "You saw. You are marked." I showed it to my grandmother. She burned it in the fire without a word. 2 weeks later, the lights stopped coming. The disappearances ceased. The FBI closed the case. Life returned to normal. But I never slept through the night again. And every year on August 3rd, I find a new drawing on my doorstep. Last year, there were 8 eyes. This year, I'm afraid to look. Story 5. The submarine that never surfaced. I served 22 years in the U.S. Navy, most of it aboard nuclear submarines. You learn to trust steel, silence, and the man next to you. You also learn that the ocean doesn't forgive mistakes, and some things down there weren't meant to be found. My name is Commander Robert Hawk Delaney. I was XO of the USS Tallahassee, SSN 771, in 2004 when we were diverted from routine patrols in the North Atlantic to investigate an anomaly 300 miles off the coast of Greenland. Officially, it was a deep-sea sensor malfunction. Unofficially, we were chasing ghosts. 2 days earlier, the Russian K-159, a decommissioned November-class sub being towed for scrap, vanished without a trace. No distress call. No debris. Just gone. Then, U.S. hydrophones picked up a signal, repeating every 97 seconds, coming from the exact same coordinates. Not sonar. Not Morse. A low-frequency pulse that made the crew's fillings vibrate and gave half the men nosebleeds. We were ordered to investigate. Quietly. We reached the coordinates at 0300 hours on March 18th. The sea was calm. Too calm. No waves. No wind. Just a flat, black mirror stretching to the horizon. Then the sonar pinged. Not a wreck. Not a whale. A structure. Massive. Cylindrical. Resting on the seabed at 1,800 feet. And it was emitting the pulse. Captain Reyes ordered a slow descent. As we dropped below 1,200 feet, every light on the sub flickered. The reactor went into automatic shutdown, not failure, but override, like something had reached in and flipped a switch from the outside. Then the whispers started. Not over comms. In our heads. Soft, overlapping voices speaking in no language I recognized, yet somehow understood. "Surface, surface, you are not ready, but we see you." Petty Officer Jenkins screamed and clawed at his eyes, babbling about black eyes in the water. We sedated him. But it spread. Within an hour, 3 more crewmen were catatonic, staring at the hull as if they could see through it. I checked the external cameras. At first, nothing. Just darkness. Then movement. Shapes. Dozens of them. Humanoid, but elongated, drifting around the sub like deep-sea fish. Their limbs bent at impossible angles. Their skin glowed faintly, pulsing in time with the signal. And their eyes, solid black, no whites, no pupils. Just voids that seemed to drink the camera's light. One pressed its face against the lens. I swear it smiled. Captain Reyes ordered emergency ascent. But the ballast tanks wouldn't respond. The rudders were locked. We were pinned, held in place by something that defied physics. Then the hull groaned. Not from pressure. From touch. Something massive was wrapping around us. Not metal. Organic. Sinewy. Like living cable. The lights died. Emergency oxygen kicked in. In the red gloom, I saw Jenkins, now standing, calm, eerily serene, walk to the torpedo room and open the outer hatch. "Don't!" I yelled. He turned to me, eyes wide, voice calm. "They're offering us a place among the stars, sir. A new ocean." He stepped out and vanished into the black. The pressure alarms blared. Water began seeping in. We sealed bulkheads, but it was too late. The thing outside was pulling us down. Captain Reyes gave the order to abandon ship. But there was no time. I was the last one conscious. I remember the cold water rising, the groan of tearing steel, and then silence. I woke up on a Norwegian fishing trawler 3 days later, 400 miles off course, floating in a life raft with no memory of how I got there. No other survivors. No wreckage. The Navy declared the Tallahassee lost to catastrophic implosion. But I know the truth. They didn't implode. They were taken. And every night since, when I'm alone in the dark, I hear the pulse again, faint, distant, but growing stronger. Last week, I saw a news report. A Chinese sub vanished in the Mariana Trench. Same coordinates pattern. Same 97-second signal. They're still down there. Waiting. And they remember my face. Story 6. The farm where time stopped. I inherited my grandfather's farm in rural Kansas after he died in 2016. Nobody in the family wanted it. Too isolated, too much work, too many rumors. But I needed a fresh start after my divorce, and 200 acres of silence sounded like heaven. I should have listened to the rumors. My name is Sarah Linwood. I moved into the old farmhouse on April 3rd. The first week was peaceful, just me, the wind through the cornfields, and the creak of the porch swing. But on the 8th night I saw the light. It wasn't lightning. Not a plane. A single, steady beam, pure white, impossibly bright, descending from the clouds and striking the center of the north field. It lasted exactly 17 seconds. Then vanished. The next morning, I found the crop circle. Not the kind you see in tabloids. This was precise. Mathematical. A perfect spiral of flattened corn, each stalk bent at a 45-degree angle, forming symbols that looked like a mix of ancient Sumerian and binary code. And in the center, a patch of soil that felt warm to the touch, even though the air was near freezing. I took photos. Sent them to a local university. They never replied. That night, the dreams started. I'd wake up standing in the field, barefoot, pajamas soaked with dew, with no memory of walking there. My hands would be covered in dirt, and I'd be whispering words I didn't know. Tar and Vol, they are coming through the veil. I installed security cameras, motion sensors, even a cheap drone. On May 12th, the drone footage showed something that made me burn the memory card. At 2:14 a.m., the white light returned. But this time, it didn't just shine down, it opened. Like a doorway in the sky. From it, figures stepped onto my land. Not walking. Materializing. 7 of them. Tall, robed in what looked like woven shadow, faces hidden beneath hoods that shimmered like heat haze. They gathered around the spiral and began to chant. Not in unison. In harmony, a sound that vibrated the ground and made my teeth ache. The corn around them began to grow, not slowly, but in fast forward, twisting into new shapes, forming arches, pillars, a structure that shouldn't exist. And then I saw him, my grandfather, standing among them, younger, healthy, smiling. He turned toward the camera, toward me, and raised a hand. His mouth moved, but the audio was just static. Still, I knew what he said. I'd heard it in my dreams for weeks. Stay. You belong here. I packed my car that night. But the engine wouldn't start. The phone lines were dead. Even my cell had no signal, no service, but a blank screen, like the tower itself had been erased. I ran to the road. But the highway wasn't there. Just more corn, stretching forever in every direction. I turned back. The farmhouse was gone too. Only the spiral remained, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The figure stood at its edge, waiting. One step forward, lowered its hood. It wasn't my grandfather. It was me. Same face, same eyes, but older, calmer, empty. You've been called, it said in my voice. The harvest begins tonight. I don't know how I escaped. Maybe they let me go. Maybe I never left. I'm writing this from a motel in Topeka. I haven't slept in 3 days. Every time I close my eyes, I hear the chanting. And my hands, they keep moving on their own, drawing the same spiral over and over in the dust on the nightstand. Last night, I looked out the window. The sky was clear. But in the distance, over the wheat fields, a single white light began to descend. They're not done with me. And deep down, part of me doesn't want them to be.